So Pivotal is opinionated about how to build software. Central to its philosophy is fast feedback. Building something small, I'm going to put that down. Building something small, testing it, refining it, rinse and repeat. So you, over time, build a better experience for your customer. So tonight, we're going to talk about how Pivotal Cloud Foundry enables developers and operators to build and operate software in the Pivotal way. I'm Therese Stowell. I'm the PM for Redis, and
I'm David Laing. I'm the product manager for LogSearch. Redis is a data store in Cloud Foundry, and LogSearch is a tool for analyzing logs and metrics.
This is the circle of code, which is a concept invented by Ansi Fikuri, who's the VP of technology for Cloud Foundry, and it kind of encapsulates the Pivotal way of building software. So the idea is this virtuous circle where you come up with an idea, you design it, you plan it, you code it, you build it, you test it, you deploy it, and then you get feedback. So the question is, what is feedback? How do we get it? How do we use it? And that's where metrics comes in.
Yes, so if you can imagine a world without metrics and a world compared to a world with metrics, in both cases what we're trying to do is we're trying to get around the circle of code from an idea through to building, through to deploying, through to getting feedback as quickly as possible. And if we don't have metrics in that loop, certainly from an operational perspective, you can imagine that we write our application and we deploy it and we check that it works and everything's great on day one. And then over the next couple of weeks, the usage grows and everything seems to be okay. And then suddenly, in the middle of the night on a Sunday, we run out of some resource like disk space and everything explodes. Now that is a terrible time to start getting feedback. It is feedback, it's just not a great time to get feedback. But if we have metrics in the picture, day one is exactly the same. We build, we check, everything looks great. Day 2 and 3, we start watching some metrics and we notice a trend. We see, hey, our usage of disk space looks like it's on an upward trajectory. Doesn't look like it's ever being reclaimed. Maybe there's a bug here. Maybe we can predict we're going to run out of disk space in 2 weeks' time. So now we know something about the future. We've gone through that loop just a little bit faster. We've got time to implement a fix when we're not panicking and running around like headless chickens. And we get something fixed. Our customers are happy and we're happy. And importantly, not only have we avoided a disaster, but we've also gone around that feedback loop even quicker. And so that's sort of the central of what we're trying to say today, is that metrics help you get from the deploy to the feedback quicker.
And the thing about metrics in this circumstance is that you know the source of the problem. You don't know, just like in the first circumstance, you know that there is a problem, but you're starting your debugging with absolutely no information. If you have metrics, you have a really good, a pretty good idea of actually what's going on in the system, which helps you solve the problem much more quickly.
So just to sort of go back, we're talking about the circle of code, and we want to talk today about the technology in Cloud Foundry that helps you with this feedback portion. So you could just jump onto the next slide. So we kind of have this idea, or the saying within Pivotal, we say we want people to focus on doing work above the so-called value line. So in the world of running your application and emitting metrics and collecting them to a central place and storing them somewhere and giving you the tools to analyze them and documenting what they are, that's all really hard work. But as someone writing an application, it's not really something that differentiates you from the customer. So we believe that should be something that your platform does, and you just get to concentrate on doing the work, doing the logic that your customer wants, and analyzing and learning from the metrics. So we want you to work above the value line, and the platform should handle everything, all the undifferentiated heavy lifting. So to go back, this is a sort of a rough schematic of the Pivotal Cloud Foundry platform. If you can remember, we've got the big circle of code. We're down here at the bottom, we're doing our CF deploy. So we're getting our application into the platform. If you could just advance. So the first thing the platform needs to do is it needs to measure what our application is doing, both the application and the data stores that the application is accessing. Next slide. Then it needs to collect all of that data, all those measurements, into some central place where they can be transmitted. This is a deceptively difficult problem, as I've discovered implementing it without a platform. Anyway, but that is something that your platform should solve for you, and which Cloud Foundry does solve for you. The component called the logregator that Therese will go into in a bit more detail later on. Then the metrics get put into some kind of store where you can analyze them over time. Next slide. This is the log search project that I'm responsible from. So there's Therese's project Redis, and here's mine. And once you've stored, then you need some kind of tool to analyze the specific metrics that make sense for your application. If you go on to the next one. So that's the kind of thing that your platform should just do for you, so that your interactions are write your app and push it into the platform so it can be run, and then analyze the data coming out the other end.
The question is, which metrics matter to you? And I'm going to make this point very powerful by doing the first of many live demos. So hold on tight. OK, so there's the logregator emits all the metrics in Cloud Foundry for all of the components, including the services, into something called the fire hose. And it's called the fire hose for a good reason. So you just run, so you interact with Cloud Foundry via Ops Manager, which is something I'll show you in a minute. But you also interact via the command line. So this is CF, Cloud Foundry, and I'm just going to, it's called nozzle. OK, so let's see everything. So this is live, and this is just this wash of information coming through. Now the point of this...
Well, firstly, that's a big deal that we got all of that in one place.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not terribly helpful.
Yeah. There's this huge wash of information that comes through. As an app developer or an operator, your job is to understand what it is your app does and what services it uses, or if you're an operator, what services are running and what the app developers are using, and figure out the intersection of what metrics are on offer with what you care about, which is a bit of work, right? But that's what you're expert in. Like that's what you should. That's where you add value. Okay. Okay, so we're going to drill down into an example that uses Redis, because that's my product. So what is Redis? Redis is an in-memory store. It's super quick. It's used for caching. It's used for data ingestion. It's used for pub/sub, publish, subscribe. It's used for queues. So there's a bunch of different uses. So given that it's an in-memory store, you might be interested in memory metrics, right? So how much memory is getting used over time? Is that memory getting fragmented? That can cause performance issues. Redis is single-threaded, right? So this is, you need to know, like as an operator or an app developer, you actually need to understand what you're using, how it behaves. You need to like dig into the internals of it to really know how to use it properly as a tool. So it's single-threaded. That might cause problems with latency, with the number of connections being limited. It supports persistence. So the way it works is you have your memory that it writes to super quick, and then it keeps a second copy, and it writes that to disk on a schedule specified by you, right? So if you write a bunch of stuff and it's not writing it to disk very often, then you might, and it crashes, then you might lose a bunch of data. So that's another thing you might want to pay attention to. It's use specific, right? So if you're using it for a key value store, you can track things like the number of hits or the number of misses. That might, flag up a problem with what you're writing. Or if you're using it as a sort of cache with an LRU value for what happens when memory is filled up, you might track the number of evicted keys. So this is a very long way of saying you really need to understand the services that you're using and how your app needs them to behave in order to understand the metrics that you should pay attention to.
And it's probably worth jumping in and saying my app and the way that correct memory usage for my app is different to your app and correct memory usage for your app. So it's very much the case of the platform can provide you with all of the details, but the pattern you're looking for and the specific one, that's very dependent on your app and your use case.
Okay, so let's look at an example app, because I find that always useful to kind of look at something specific. So we'll talk about Twitter-ish. We're going to publish and save just this, fire hose of messages, right? So you're just saving and saving and saving. So your metrics for Twitter-ish might be how many messages are coming in. Really sorry about that. How many users do we have? How many failed connections, right? So say we're super successful and the usage goes through the roof. Well, are we going to turn people away? That's a real problem, right? That can make your business fail or do poorly. So David coined this term called canary metrics, which I really like. It's the metrics that are sort of the 2 or 3 that are really key to the performance of your app. And you learn what they are over time, and it is super specific to your particular use case. Okay, so again, we're going to dig into Twitter-ish using which metrics might be interesting. In this particular case, memory usage is the most obvious one off the top of the bat, and this is what the actual Redis metric is for used memory. There's something about Redis that you need to know, which is there's this max memory policy. So you can say that when memory gets full, writes just start to fail, or you can say that when memory gets full, it behaves in an LRU way. So like if you're writing a cache, the oldest data gets expunged and new data comes in. So that's something that you need to understand, because if you are if you set it to LRU if it's LRU, for example, and then you will use your data. Like on Twitter, you would just lose the data, which is not good. Okay, so I wrote a really stupid app. This just writes data to Redis in a loop, in an infinite loop. But it is actually what Twitter does, right? So Twitter is this, just people write messages and they don't stop, and the messages are never deleted, so it just grows and grows and grows. So I'm going to do a demo. Actually, I want to do, sugar. I was gonna show you Cloud Foundry, but I'm not going to because I don't want to faff around with Chrome. But what Ops Manager, you can see that we've got Redis installed, the Redis tile, and in Redis you configure which Amazon VM you want to use, the VM size. So you basically specify how many resources you give Redis. And what you can do is, if you're seeing in your metrics that you're going to run out of space, you can allocate a bigger VM, right? So these are the sort of, this is how you tune things, right? Okay, so we are going to run the app. So the first thing you do, and this is, you want to talk about the haiku?
No, go. We've got some waiting.
All right. So the first thing you do is you do a create service. So we're going to make a Redis. We're going to make it a dedicated VM, and we're just going to call it Redis. Okay, so it worked. Yay! All right. So that's now we've got our own instance of Redis inside Cloud Foundry waiting for us to use. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to push our app do you know what I'm using? I'm doing the wrong app. Okay, so I ran the wrong one. I'm going to go run the other one.
So if you think back to our circle, what we're doing here is we're pushing our application code up into the platform, and let's just run it.
Yeah,
and there's quite a nice haiku that goes around inside Pivotals that says, here is my code, please make it run, I do not care how. And that's kind of the philosophy behind CF push.
Okay, so I've started my app up, and I have, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, my app gets to use this instance of Redis that I just created. Yeah?
Could you command plus a few times to make the font a little bigger? Sorry.
Yeah.
Scroll back down. Thank you.
Okay. Right, so now we've bound the service to this app that we've written, and then we're going to start it. Okay, so what's really cool is when you write an app in Cloud Foundry, it's just, in this case, it's Ruby code, and then there's a manifest that says, I want this number of instances, et cetera. And then there's a list of packages that it compiles with, and then it makes, Cloud Foundry bundles it all up together for you and just makes it run. So what was it again? The end of the haiku?
Here is my code, please make it run, I do not care how.
Yeah.
Which I believe, Colin, you were...
It is really powerful, and I'm going to show you something else really cool in a minute. That's my other favorite thing.
That was a feature of our app, by the way. It's got a great...
Yeah. Okay. So we used the Sinatra library so that we can just hit an endpoint and it will kick off. In fact, I'm going to have to get Chrome back. Okay, so that's, can you get?
Yep.
So we've got Kibana running.
So this may have been where our there we go. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Oh, cool. Just leave it like that.
Yeah, let's not full screen it. It's just making our
No.
lives difficult. I'll make that bigger.
No, don't.
not that full screen.
I want to be able to switch.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Okay. So we're gonna. This is the joy of live demos. So we're spawning a bunch of threads that write data, and we can just watch, supposedly watch the. This should go up. All right, so we're going to go do something else.
Is it auto-refreshing or not?
It should be. Please? Yes! Ta-da! Okay, right. So as an operator, you would look at that and you'd go, uh-oh. I mean, good things, because we've got lots of customers, but if we let that continue, we will run out of memory, and we need to do something about that. I've got a couple more examples, but I don't really feel like they're... Should I keep going through the examples?
No, I think this is the core point. I mean, you could have deployed your app and that you saw that add tweet work, and that's great, and everyone's happy. But if we go and look sort of behind the covers a bit, we can see a trend. You can see that trend is not reducing, so we can make some educated guesses before things blow up.
And there's a couple, so here's the connected clients, right? So if you have a bunch of people making requests, you might watch this metric go up and up and up and realize that you have to deploy more apps. In fact, actually, that is something I will show you, because it is my favorite thing about Cloud Foundry is...
Do Control L.
Thank you. Control L.
Yep. There's the screen.
Cool. So what you can do with Cloud Foundry, if you want your app to replicate itself. So say you all of a sudden you have this, you get some coverage in the Evening Standard, and you get this big influx of customers, and you have to scale up provision. You have to make your app available to many, many more people all at once. This is how easy it is. So CF scale R connect minus I, and we're going to go from 20 instances to 200 instances. Boom. How cool is that? Love that. Okay, back to the... So, did you want to ask?
Can you automate that?
Automate what?
The increases, the steps?
Do you know what? This is kind of a philosophical discussion, but Cloud Foundry automates the stuff that's sort of dumb decision making, like the kind of busy work stuff, but it will always take a human to operate. It will always take somebody doing the work to understand what are the metrics and what are the actions to take on the back of them, on the basis of those metrics, because it could possibly be, you're running out of memory. That could be a bug in your app, or that could be, so that requires a conversation with the app developers. So you just don't know. It's like we've been talking about how to restore, how to backup and restore. Backup you can automate, restore you can't, because there are kind of too many edge cases that you, that you can't code for, right? Because it could do something really, really wrong. That make sense?
Yeah, it's okay. I'll tell you later on.
Okay. Right. So so I just wanted to close with a quote from Matt Stein, who's another PM at Cloud Foundry. And it's about how to build and deploy faster and safer. And I think it really does summarize what we're trying to talk about. Measure everything, establish a profile for what's normal, detect deviations from the norm, including absolute values and rate of change, and identify the components contributing to those deviations. So this is really about being an expert in what your app does, what your services do, and how they should behave, what's normal.
And I think that concludes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So to go back and conclude, we talked about this idea of the circle of code. You want to try to go from idea through building, through deployment, and metrics help you do this last little bit of getting feedback on what's actually happening from an operational perspective quicker, so you can learn before disaster, and you can get back to the point where you can get new ideas and rinse and repeat. So we hope that we believe that the platform that you host on, like Cloud Foundry, should be something that automates away all of that boring collection and running and so forth, and allows you to become an expert in the parts of your app that only you could be an expert in, and allow you to monitor it, to learn from that, to go through the process of tuning your app and your service, and hopefully you get happy customers, and therefore you're happy as well. So from Therese and I, thanks very much for your attention, and enjoy measuring those metrics.